I'm so grateful to speak to you today about a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. I am the Associate Professor of Clarinet at Liberty University, and I also am the coordinator of Woodwind Studies. And like many people who studied professional music, when I was in school at Michigan State University, I was held to a high standard. My professors were tough. They were tough on me, as we discussed earlier today. And I can't say that I'm upset about it. I think that I wanted to be held to a high standard. And there was a lot of, what we say in the States, tough love. They wanted me to be the best performer possible. And the techniques used by them, pedagogical techniques that were used by them today, then I noticed that when I became a professor, they weren't as effective on this generation, the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, as they are up and coming. And it took a while. I was right there when things started to change. I became a professor at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I hadn't yet encountered a student that would just burst into tears, and I hadn't done anything to merit it. I hadn't encountered someone who was dealing with depression so much that they were unable to practice all week. And then it was, sort of on me to figure out how to handle that lesson. I hadn't encountered people who were dealing with focus issues like ADHD, and they were unable to prepare for the lesson, or unable to think in the lesson, or retain what I said in the lesson. And so I am a results person. I like to see the result. I like to see people become successful. Wherever they are in their walk of life, I want to see them grow as a musician. And I noticed that the pedagogical techniques that we were using were unsuccessful. And so I started using some new techniques. I was like, I'm gonna try this and try that. And they were successful. And then I noticed that they fall under the category of spirituality or spiritualism. And I started researching this, and it just was a wonderful journey for me. But I noticed that there isn't a lot written, or maybe not enough, about collegiate level private lessons. And I'm right here at the start of my journey, understanding it, and I wanted to share with this committee what I've learned so far and learn from you. And it's been so wonderful this morning to hear what you had to say. But one of the things that was really shocking to me is how many students nowadays are really facing those same issues. Clinical anxiety, clinical depression, focus issues like ADHD, even dyslexia, things like that. They're at a higher level than ever before. And studies are showing this, that especially the post-pandemic crew, they're really facing these at a higher level. And I've talked to many of my colleagues around the nation, and I was wondering, is this just a me problem? Am I facing this at my university? No, it's everywhere. People are really trying to figure out how to accommodate folks. And it's something that's with us. There's a lot written about secondary education, a lot written about primary education, a lot written about ensembles, as we heard today. And there's not really a lot about this particular subject, how to handle it. There are a lot of questions why that can be. Why is spiritualism necessary, and why aren't people talking about it? Well, maybe it's where I'm a little bit ahead of the curve. It's definitely something, I read a lot of doctoral student papers at Liberty University. People who are currently teaching secondary and primary school, they're writing about this in their doctoral theses on different versions of the topic, because it's among them at a high level, how to deal with different kinds of students. And they talk about, dealing with anxiety and depression, but they're not really saying this word right here, spirituality, spiritualism. And so I wanted to give you my personal definition, first of all, because I think it's the sort of topic that you need to have your definition. And as I've read so many wonderful works, people might be far off into the realm of transcendental spirituality, and some people are more practical, like empathy and connection. I find myself more in that realm. And so I just wanted to give you a quick definition of how I feel. I think it's a combination of these three things for me, which, just quickly, organicism, the understanding of the universe through connection, which is so important for that 18 to 25-year-old range of students. Romanticism, which for me is a point of view that preferences subjectivity, romantic and creative elements. And I say preferences because it's on purpose. to be positive, to think about things in a positive connection. And then finally, perhaps the most important for me, teleology, the explanation of phenomena in terms of purpose. And this group really needs to think about purpose. They need to see everything in terms of purpose. So I bring those three together to make my personal definition of spirituality. And for me, it comes to what Palmer says is that highest level of consciousness. Self-awareness about me and empathy towards others. And it's an important thing to teach. But the word that I find myself coming to more and more is urgency. Urgency for this to be adopted. And I have a quote here that just really speaks to me. I wanted to share it with you. The future of civilization depends on the widespread agreement on the sense of interconnections among the individual, the collectivity, and the ultimate purpose and meaning of human existence. We're there. We need to start applying this principle to everything that we do. It's so important. But as I started studying this more and more, trying to understand where the problems lie, in the United States primarily, I looked at the National Center for Educational Statistics, which their report came out in May 2024, and they listed that collegiate institutions in the United States are actually a little bit below the average internationally for enrollment. And I was surprised by that. Not, maybe I shouldn't be, but I was a little surprised. And so I thought, well, maybe it's online education. In the pandemic, a lot of people chose online education. Maybe they're not doing it anymore. But Forbes says that online education has doubled. So it must be residential education that is seeing a little bit of the downswing, which is a good point to say. If students are experiencing problems with focusing, anxiety, depression, they may actually prefer online education so they don't have that one-on-one interaction, so that people aren't tough on them. For me, that becomes a financial issue. I want people to come to college and study music. I want them, if that's what they want to do with their lives, I want them to come study with me. So we see this urgency to adapt new techniques, to be on the cutting edge, to have students choose our universities. Many times as a student said to me, I'm going to come to Liberty University because I feel connected to you. And I've been like, oh, okay, that's good. I've actually sent students to graduate schools to audition, and they said, I don't feel connected with that school. I don't feel, just in the recent past. Or I really feel connected with that. When I was a student, I don't think that I really thought about connecting with the professor. I was thinking about the prestige, what I could get out of it. It's a different market nowadays. And we need to adjust to it. Now, when we talk about spiritualism and music education, for me again, I'm thinking about a movement away from purely and solely curriculum development. We have to think about, obviously we have to think about curriculum development, but it can't only be that. Every clarinet player in my studio plays the exact same thing. That's it. Everybody does it the same. No. I call this educational fundamentalism. Well, I don't call it, other people do, but that's what this is the way I studied, and you need to study that way too. It's just not going to work for this generation. It might work for some people, but on the whole, I think a lot of students would prefer to not study music at all if that was the context. So we need to start looking at them as individuals and teaching them individually. What does that person need for their personal journey as they become a successful musician in their private lessons? And that individualized approach will help people focus on their personal growth, self-worth, but also their personal journey. And that's where the techniques of this start to become important. When we're dealing with students who are either at risk or in the midst of these problems that I listed, they need special attention, but not just them. People in this generation, they want to be connected to their professor. So it's an important thing. And I see this as more, this lecture is just the tip of this iceberg. I want to see the educational spiral happen. As we teach, we learn. As we teach, we learn. As we teach, we learn. It just continues. We learn through this process. And I definitely practice what I preach here. I'm constantly evolving. Now, it's important to say for a second that the lesson landscape of collegiate world maybe just in the US, I'm not sure, is all about measurement. We want to know, is your curriculum successful? Are your students successful? And are you recruiting? That's the way administrators assess us. And it's important to keep that in mind in anything that you choose to do in a collegiate setting, that you will be measured. And it's an important thing. So I would say that everything I'm saying falls within those parameters. We just need to rethink the way that we measure. And the measurement for me becomes about beginning with that plurality in methodology, a mixture of aesthetic and praxial methods, but maybe even more than that. However your student learns the best is the one is that technique you want to use, so that they feel that connection to you. My teacher is learning about me as I learn from them. It's a beautiful thing. And when we look at this individualized approach, we begin to see teachers investing in their students, not just saying, if you want to be a professional, you're going to have to play 20 hours this week. I don't care. But a person saying, well, we need to find the right amount of time for you and understand what you're going through at this time. It may be more this week, maybe less this week. We need to find a way for you to be the maximum successful. And that's the reality for it. And then their development holistically, which is so important to me. This, I believe, as you develop the professional, is the true measure of success. We create that environment. So what does it mean to develop a professional? There's so much more to being a music professional than just playing music. You need to understand how stressful it is. You understand talking to other people, networking, going to conferences like this, anything. Whatever the student is doing, they need to understand every part of it if you really want to see true success in your students. So, as we get into one of the most important ones, recruitment and retainment. Like never before in our history can a student give you a review. They can get on their phones, talk to each other, tell everybody what they think of you as a professor. And not that you should be afraid, just aware that this kind of connectivity that they have in their social media world, it's there with us. So we want to make sure that when students talk about us, they talk about how great of a person you are. Are you connecting with your students? Are you when you meet them, do they go, I like that person? Or is it more like, the prestige of this university is more important than you? If you want to be a part of this, then you need to be like us. It doesn't work for everybody. In fact, more than ever before, it doesn't work for everybody. And we want to make sure that the incoming students, like I say, feel that, and the people we are trying to retain. But this is the criticism that I see over and over again. Connecting with your students, employing spiritualism in your teaching, could cause unprofessionalism. I won't deny it is a problem, but Marian D'Souza, such a great writer for this subject, he has an essay called Connectedness and Connectedness, the Dark Side of Spirituality. And the truth is that there is always a possibility that a person can go too far, and I don't mean in an illegal way, but more like they're just too invested. And also, when you connect with a student, you might bring someone into your life. But there needs to be boundaries and parameters. And so I say to all of the critics that we need to create a structure. So I would like to propose a structure for employing spiritualism in your private lessons in a collegiate setting. Here's the structure right here. Oh, right here. For their continued satisfaction in their retainment, we're going to support their development in 3 areas: academically, professionally, and spiritually. And to do this, I have a structure I call goal-oriented teaching. So when the students come in, I talk to them about their goals. They're goals that I can hold them accountable to because they made them. And so the first of the 3 goals is academic. Most of the academic goals are set by the university, but they get to choose their own major. Professional. I want to be first chair in the New York Philharmonic. You know, what do you want to do with your life? Do you want to be a performer? Do you want to be an educator? What is your plan? We're going to hold you to those professional goals. And then your personal goals. So helpful in a collegiate setting. I want to be first chair of the university ensemble. I want to win the concerto competition. You know, they're personal things. So when they come in and they say, you know, I've had a hard time this week, and I'm really hurting I can connect with them and sympathize, but then going a step further, I'll say, we need to figure out a way for you to achieve your goals. And that connection of I care about your goals has been really helpful. I've seen tremendous success, and not just with students who are at risk, but students who are also doing well, and thriving. I've seen their success. I had Liberty University is a Christian university in Virginia, and I had a student graduate and receive a full scholarship to the Boston Conservatory. And I'm so proud of him, but he had a hard time with stress, like many students. And I felt that it was more important for him, I didn't want one arm to be stronger than the other arm. He was developing well in clarinet. I wanted him to develop well holistically. We talked about the profession, we talked about stress. It was great. And I've done this with so many students, and I've seen their success. But I think the people I'm most proud of are students who got out on stage and couldn't play at all. And they froze. And through time of connecting with them, helping them learn not just the technique, but also learn about how to be a musician up here. Those students I noticed really found success, and I think I'm most proud of them, all in all. So in conclusion, when I'm thinking about putting spiritualism in my lessons, I believe that it allows me to invest in students. And I think that it's important that we maintain our professionalism using a structure. Make your own structure. I call mine goal-oriented teaching. And these connections will increase recruitment and retainment like never before. And you'll be able to build that holistic student and increase their professional success. I really am so grateful to talk to you about this today. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I love seeing results, but I never miss a chance to connect with a student. They go out into the world and change things. I believe all of my students that I connected with have a desire to connect with their students. Are we changing the world one student at a time? I think we can. And it's important to see that practical edge of this. Why isn't it more so in collegiate music that we're talking about this? I don't know. I've seen some about ensembles, things like that. Not so much about thinking about the lessons. And I'm excited to see more and more and more as I read and learn about this subject. And it's just been a great opportunity to be with all of you today. How am I doing here? 2 minutes left. Well, I've come to the end of my lecture, and I'm so grateful to have spoken to all of you today. Thank you so much.